Hey Trampions, welcome to something new for 2017. We are starting the WWE Marathon. What this means is I am starting with the first episode of Raw. Yes, I know I could go back even further. I could go back to a Wrestling Classic and start there, but I figured it'd be easiest to just start with Raw. Once a day, every day, we are going to update this with another episode of Raw. When we get to a pay-per-view, we'll do a pay-per-view. When we get to where Smackdown starts, we'll do Smackdown. We'll throw that in, and hopefully by the time we get there, WWE will have added Smackdown to the network, and we can keep doing that. But right now they have apparently all but one episode of Raw. So we're going to do every Raw and every WWE pay-per-view that fits in there once a day, every day. See how long this can go. It'd be lovely if we could catch up, but that'll be about... I'd have to do the math, but that's a few years from now for us to catch up with present day shows. So let's see how this goes. We're going to start with episode 1. Alright, so we're talking about the first episode of Raw. This is from January 11th, 1993. It was 2 weeks before the Royal Rumble, and they start with Sean Mooney telling Bobby Heenan that he's not allowed in. He's been replaced by Rob Bartlett. Rob Bartlett, by the way, awful choice to have on the show. Awful. He was a member of the Imus in the Morning show, morning radio DJ. It really felt like to him the show was getting in the way of his comedy. He wanted to do his morning radio routine, and the matches were just getting in his way. It did not work. They kept him on. We'll see how long they kept him on. It was way too long. They should have had this episode hit and realized, hey, this isn't working. But they didn't. They kept it going. First match was a squash. Literally, Yokozuna beating Koko B. Ware. Yokozuna, at the time, undefeated. This is before he would win the title. This is him running up to that, this big, massive push that he was about to get. And here, he literally squashes Koko B. Ware. I mean, when you hit that bonsai drop at his size, there's only so much you can do to protect somebody. Some people, he didn't even do that much. Apparently, he respected Koko enough to do what little he could, but that's got to be legitimately over 400 pounds of pressure on your chest at that point. Next match is Steiner Brothers versus the Executioners. The Executioners were underneath the mask. They were Dwayne Gill and who's the other one? That would be Barry Hardy, who's not a name you're going to know. Dwayne Gill you'll know because he would later go on to be Gilbert. But on the indies, they were called the Lords of Darkness. They had some minor success in the Mid-Atlantic area in a few different leagues, did a little bit for ECW, and then they got brought in as the Executioners, and this match is the kind of thing that you can really expect from them basically on any match. So, not a great showing. You got some Bartlett jokes on it, but it was basically Steiner's dominating in the hopes that they would go on to a great WWE career. Obviously, they didn't stay with WWE for very long, and they went back to WCW not long afterwards and had a much bigger career back there. But for the time, WWE thought they were a solid investment. Afterwards, you've got another Heenan sketch where he's trying to sneak in as a woman in drag. He is posing as Rob Bartlett's aunt, and that's supposed to let him enter. Yeah. Then you get an in-ring promo from Razor Ramon where he's hyping up his title shot against Bret Hart for the title at Royal Rumble. It's a decent promo. He worked better without live promos at this point. He really didn't get to be a really good live promo until he went to WCW. His best work in WWE was the sketches that they ran for him to debut him. So, not the best promo out there, but it is what it is. You've got then Max Moon versus Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels, at the time, coming out to the Sensational Sherry version of his theme song. It's the same song you hear today when he comes out, but Sherry was the one singing it. It really... even though the instrumentation is identical, it catches your ear different when you're so used to him singing it. It's very different. And when he entered, he did the same pose, but this was before he got any of the pyro. So, like, Max Moon is still in the ring, blocking the camera shot of him doing that split leg pose that he does. And it's very, going back now, 23 years later, it's very weird to watch. It was a very competitive match. You wouldn't expect that with Max Moon. This is before they'd given up on him. So there was it was actually a decent match, but obviously Max Moon's not one of the guys with their name on the list of Intercontinental Champions, so you know who won this. Doink came back out. Doink was out in the background of the Steiner Brothers match and the Intercontinental Championship match, out in the arena, basically teasing kids. They called attention to it and then moved on. You know, they didn't try to cut to it often, but it was happening in the backgrounds of the shot. So it was obviously something you were supposed to be aware of, but not focus on. Also during the match, Rob Bartlett did an extended impression of Mike Tyson. Like, it went on for most of the match, having nothing to do with the match. The concept was that he was calling from solitary confinement, and he just would not stop. There would be like 5 seconds of dead air, and you think they're going to get back to covering the match, and he would stay in character, not letting it go. It was bad. Then there were a lot of Royal Rumble promos. Shawn Michaels and Mario Jannetty did there. This is the old style where it was just one person talking to camera with a blank background. A lot of those kinds of promos. Like I said, this is 2 weeks before Royal Rumble, so they're really trying to get all that in. Then they did a recap of Kamala's face turn, because that was going to be a big deal. Slick came out. Slick, who was a heel manager, was the guy who came out and helped Umaga turn face, turning on Harvey Whippleman and Kim Chi. Kim Chi would have been probably the Brooklyn Brawler at this time. So it was weird, and it went nowhere. Damien Demento versus Undertaker. They make a big deal out of this being the first ever main event to Raw, but it wasn't the last segment. It was a squash match. It was over quick. Undertaker dominated. Damien Demento got in a few shots early on, and then just nothing. It was over quick. They knew pretty much from the beginning that Damien Demento wasn't going to be their guy, and Undertaker could be their guy. So that's how that went. After the match ended, they did a joke promo for a match next week between Woody Allen and Mia Farrow, because they were going with the pop culture references then at the expense of the show. And then they cut to a commercial and came back to do a segment with Doink, where he was now being called out face to face by Crush. So that was the last segment of the show. Not the Undertaker match, but Crush and Doink confrontation. And then after that, they cut to one last segment with Bobby Heenan, where he finally got to go into the show after it was over. So very, very weird to go back now 23 years later and watch this show with nobody still around. I mean, The Undertaker's doing a part-time schedule at best. Shawn Michaels hasn't wrestled in a number of years, and he'll come out and do 1 or 2 appearances a year, maybe do a pre-show. Rob Bartlett, thank goodness, is gone. Randy Savage, rest in peace. I have no idea where Rob Bartlett is, but I hope that he's not coming back. Bobby Heenan has not been physically able to do commentary for years, unfortunately. All these guys are just long gone. Yokozuna, rest in peace. I have no idea where Koko B. Ware is these days. It's interesting to go back in a 45-minute runtime. It's a 3-hour show now. It was a 1-hour show there with 15 minutes of commercials, which even that nowadays would be 16 to 18 minutes. You'd probably have a 42-minute runtime if it were an hour show today. So that's a really packed hour with all those matches in there, and none of them were very competitive except for the Intercontinental title match, and even that wasn't the main event. It's so weird to see how they were doing things back then. But that's what we're doing with the marathon. We're going to watch and see as we start to see the seeds plant of what the show today is. So stay with me. Tomorrow we will have episode 2 up. We'll be looking at the next episode, and then we'll be looking at the Royal Rumble for episode 3, then back to Raw for episode 4. Happy New Year, everybody. Thank you. Hit subscribe, hit like. We're going to be throwing up videos here and have a subscription box somewhere in here. Tell your friends. I love you. Thank you, Trampions. As always, I am the Tramp. Cheers.